Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today, I am joined with a special guest, a Paralympic champion for track cycling, a 5-time world champion on track and road, who was diagnosed with MS at the age of 27. I've known this person for a long time and I'm really excited to have them on my podcast today. So with that said, I would love to introduce to you Emily Petricola. Hello, Emily.
Hi, Elise.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm going well. How about you?
Yeah, I am amazing. I'm so excited to have you on my show and I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. I already know that the listeners will get so much value from what you have to share. So, Emily, you just recently won a gold medal. I think we just spoke about it before we press record. What was that for specific?
Most recently, we've had track national championships and the Oceania championships.
Mm-hmm.
And I won at track nationals. I won the individual pursuit, the 500-metre time trial on the track, and the scratch race in the Omnium. So clean sweep on the track nationals. And then I only raced the 500-metre time trial, and I did the qualifying round of the individual pursuit and was fastest qualifier, but pulled out of the final just because I had a bit of physical issue off the back of some MS stuff in the final, and then won the road time trial as well. So it was a busy few weeks.
Wow, that's amazing.
Off the list, yeah.
Yeah, that's epic. And so I honestly have so many questions, and before I get started, maybe just a quick few so those listening can get to know who you are. So how old are you, Emily, and where are you from?
So I'm 41, and I'm originally from Melbourne, but currently living in Brisbane. I spent a few years living in the UAE teaching over there because I'm a school teacher as well, and then moved back because I made the national cycling team, and then ended up moving to Adelaide for a couple of years and then moved here. So it's been a bit of a circular journey to get to Brizzy.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy. I like the lifestyle up here. It's pretty good for training in winter and all that sort of stuff. Hard in summer, but good in winter.
Yeah, for sure. And so in your bio, also with the Paralympics and stuff, diagnosed with MS at 27. So for those who don't know what MS is, would you be able to give a brief description of what you experience on a day-to-day basis with that?
Yeah. So, MS impacts everyone really differently. And for me, I was diagnosed a long time ago now, so I've got significant impairment across all 4 of my limbs. So my hands don't grip well at all. I get tremors in my arms and my legs. I've got hypertonicity, which is like a bit of spasticity where the muscles are always switched on, sort of through various points in my body. I've got foot drop on my left side. My left side probably is more uncoordinated even than my right side. The MS disability is really obvious when you see me on a bike. Yeah, there's lots of pain and fatigue, and there's cognitive issues, and there's issues with urinary sort of issues and bowel issues. It's not a pretty disease. It attacks the nervous system, so it literally impacts every part of my body and every aspect of my life. It's a pretty devastating diagnosis, I think, for anyone to get, let alone someone who's 27 years old and really in the prime of their life, which is usually when it is diagnosed. So
yeah, wow. And so with that, have you always been cycling?
No, I was a rower when I was younger at school, and then for a couple of years after school I did rowing as well. So it was strength endurance sport. I literally couldn't do anything else for the first 7 years that I was sick. And I was working with a guy called Matt Ryan, who was an Olympic level rower. at the time. And then I'd said to him, would he be able to help me? Like, I tried with your dad, actually. He tried with me like early on in the piece, like for the first few years, because I put on an enormous amount of weight, because literally or overnight couldn't exercise, because with MS, as soon as you exercise, your temperature goes up and stimulates all of the MS issues to sort of attack. And so I tried personal training with your dad and like hadn't been able to sustain it. So after 7 years, I weighed about 115 kilos at this point, because you're also put on massive doses of steroids to try and control some of the flares as they happen. Matt said to me, my mate, I said to him, would you be able to help me get back into exercise? And he said, well, what are the issues? Why haven't you been successful so far? And I said, I think it's because of the heat. And he said, well, why don't we set you up? He said, what has worked? And I said, it seems that regardless of how bad things are, I can always turn my legs over on a bike. And he said, well, this is easy. He had a watt bike at the time. He said, we'll put that in the office with the AC on and a fan in your face, and we'll just start with 5-minute increments and build it up. And so we'd started that sort of back end of 2014, early 2015. And within a couple of months, he was like, oh, I think you should try and make the Tokyo Paralympic team. And I started laughing, thinking, yeah, righto. I said, I didn't know anything about parasport, to be honest. Like, I thought that you had to be missing a limb or in a wheelchair to be eligible. And he said, no. He knew Carol Cook, who has MS. She'd won the time trial at the London Games. And he said, I think she had MS. And so we looked her up and I was like, yes, she does. And he said, well, let's do it. And I said, well, if you think I can, like, I'm not going to argue. I'll just do the training. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It gives me something positive to look forward to anyway. And I went along and got classified, which is where they do like the medical screening to see what your impairment level is. And I was very definitely impaired enough, which we obviously knew. But yeah, so from that point forward, it sort of just grew.
Wow, that's incredible. And how long did it take you from making that decision of, yeah, okay, well, let's do the Tokyo Olympics and see what happens, to then actually doing it? How long was that process?
So we started on the bike probably the back end of 2014. And I mean, I moved overseas to the UAE not long after that for work. But my commitment was to my coach at the time, to Matt, and to Shane Kelly, who was my cycling coach. Like, I'd come back every summer there, which is the winter here, when I got my 8 to 10 week break, to get coaching and to also race road nationals every year. So we had a benchmark performance where we knew where I was at in terms of making or not making the national team, how far away I was. And so I came back for it was 2016 was my first road nationals. And I came back from that and I was about 2.5 minutes off the girls who won, and they were going to Rio, to that Paralympic Games. And so I was like, that's not a bad start. Came back the following year and got beaten by different athletes who were new to the scene, and so sort of got pushed back a little bit, and then came back end of 2017, early 2018, and made my first national team because I won on the track initially, and then was selected for some road stuff in 2019. So it took a few years. It wasn't like it just happened overnight, and I'm really lucky that my training history from rowing sort of set me up for success in cycling, because they're both strength endurance sports, and the training background really has made me really strong. So that's my secret weapon on the bike.
And having the mindset and the discipline to keep showing up, and even though like life's throwing you all these challenges along the way, still keeping that goal in sight. Like, I'm curious to know, how did you deal with your MS on a mindset level? And obviously then going to 115 kilos, being someone that was quite athletic, and then putting on that weight, and then also then deciding, I'm going to do the Olympics. Like, I'm sure you had different mindset challenges along the way, and I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit or give us an insight into how you dealt with those challenges that life throws.
Yeah, I think early on, when I first got sick, it was all about ignore it. It doesn't change anything. Put it in front of the other and just keep doing it, and keep pretending that everything's okay. Because if I pretend hard enough, maybe everything will be okay. And I was really sick in the first 3 years that I was diagnosed. I was in hospital every few months with a relapse, which is why I put on so much weight, because you just, they pump you full of, they put, give you the steroids to get rid of the inflammation in the lesion, to hopefully then minimise long-term disability. But what the impact that then has on the way that you feel about yourself and the way you feel about your life, because you have no control over it. There was a lot of just get up in the morning, go to work, come home, go to bed. Like, I was literal just survival for me those 50 years, and it was just about getting through the day. And then I remember it was after about 4 or 5 years, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, I think I'm actually depressed. Because I understand, like, I'm surrounded by all of these amazing, like, all my friendship circle are like the world's best people. I feel so lucky. And I'm like, how can, like, I must be a good person, like, to have these people support me and love me. Mm-hmm. But, like, I never had a significant other at that point that was really serious. And so I was like, well, maybe there's something in that. So I was like, maybe I need to see a psych just to try and work out what's going on. And I was like, I think I might be a bit depressed. And so I went in and did all of this work with the psych, and it was really, it changed the way that I viewed myself. It changed the way that I viewed my own life. And it was like, okay, this has happened to me. Like, I got sick and I carry this illness every day of my life, and literally every day is different. Like, I don't know how any part of my body is going to be on any given day. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have tremors and not be able to, like, pick my keys up off the bench, or, you know, like, I can't predict what my body is going to do or throw at me. But it's just about being okay with anything that comes, and just knowing, like, I've been through worse, and even if it is worse than I've been through before, it will get better. So I remember sitting, and this sounds strange, but I was really lucky in that after 3 or 4 years, I was put on a medication where I had to go into a chemotherapy ward for treatment once a month. And sitting in that ward with the people that I sat with, like, it was such a wake-up call in that, like MS is shit. Like, there's absolutely no question about it. It's a horrible disease. You wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I'm not dying of cancer today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, like, every challenge that I'm given, it's a gift, because I still get to get up and do it tomorrow, you know. And I honestly don't think that anyone gets through life without challenge or unscathed, is the way I sort of say it. We all have a challenge that we have to overcome, and this is one of mine. It's not the only one. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get cancer. It doesn't mean that I don't go through other hardships as well. It's just that this is one that I know I have every day. And I guess, like, every time I get an opportunity to overcome something, like, you've just got to be grateful for that. Like, and know that it will get better. Like, if you make positive choices and you remember what it is you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, then a positive outcome will be, like, the result.
Wow, I love that so much, that your challenges are your gift.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible. Like, we'd all love a cushy life. It'd be so lovely to have a few weeks where nothing went wrong, but it's also not reality. Like, no one does. But, like, and the level of the challenge can be different. It's hard to feel like that a lot of the time. Like, when I had to pull out of that race, like, I was pretty hysterical, going, like, I know I shouldn't do this race, but I also want to do it. So having to make those kind of decisions, they're really hard to make because they're not your choice. Like, you feel like you're robbed of choice in those moments. And I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit emotional.
It's okay.
But going through that is also what makes me a better athlete off the back end of it, and a better person. And, yeah, I think that you learn more about yourself in those moments than you do if everything's all perfect and rosy all the time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I know that listeners right now can also resonate. So I'm curious to know, like, how do you just show up every day with that resilience? Like, why do you do what you do? And what would be your advice for people that are going through something challenging right now and do have that goal? And what would be your advice to them to keep going?
I think the reason why I keep getting on the bike, even though everything is so hard, is because it's one thing I can do really well, where my disability, like, even though, like, it makes it harder, I can still do it really well. And for as long as I can do it really, really well, I want to be the best that I can be at that. And I want to prove what I can do as opposed to focus on the things that I can't do. And I think that's always the way to get through anything. It's like, okay, you've been presented with challenge X, Y, or Z. It's like, are you going to sit there and think about all of the negatives associated with it? Or are you just going to try and move past it and focus on what it is that you're actually trying to achieve? So for me, I want to continue to win multiple world titles moving forward, and I want to win at least two gold medals at the next Paralympic Games.
Yeah.
And for me to do that, I need to be working with the people who believe in me and really support me well and understand how operate, and I'm doing it for them as well. So it's like I'm honouring my own body and what it can do, but I'm also honouring the work of these other individuals that put so much into it. So, you know, for me, the team, and it's the same for everyone. This is what I say to school kids all the time is the team around you. Like for me, it's like a team of professional support staff. But for you guys, it's like it's your friends, it's your family. Like they're your team. You've got to honour them. They believe in you. They love you. Like even if you don't feel that way about yourself, look at the people around you and what they think of you. Like do it for that reason. Like if you don't have the confidence in yourself, like all these other people do, so maybe believe them.
Yeah.
Don't believe the doubter in yourself. Like I think that's the key. It's all the self-belief stuff I think is so undervalued.
And what would be like your tips for improving or increasing your own self-belief? Because I know you mentioned before about your coach said, let's do Tokyo Paralympics. And you were like, well, okay, like if you believe I can, then I will. So I could imagine over time your own self-belief has improved. What would be your tips for someone that is wanting to improve their own self-belief?
I think it's like anything. You've got to flex the muscle, and it's not about being arrogant in terms of how you operate as a person, because I would say that I'm relatively humble, but I'm really aware of what I've achieved and why I've achieved it. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging I've won a lot of world titles. I've won a Paralympic gold medal. I've broken the world record a number of times.
Yeah, you have. Well,
because I've worked really hard for it.
Yeah.
I think that I've definitely got a physiology for this sport. Before I got sick, when I finished rowing, I was talent identified to do track cycling and never did it. So I feel like I was always meant to do it. But there are a lot of talented athletes out there that never make it. And it's because they either don't believe in themselves enough to really challenge themselves and make the sacrifices that are necessary. But I think the best way to sort of improve your self-belief is to acknowledge what you're doing well and listen to the people around you. Because I think a lot of the time we don't hear the positive feedback, we focus on negative feedback. And I think that's a real cultural issue. And listening to positive feedback and taking it on board as much as you do the negative doesn't make you arrogant. It actually just makes you like a better person, because you're actually able to see yourself, the whole version of yourself. Like we can all sit there. It's like anyone looking in the mirror, the first thing you see is like the line on your face or the pimple on your face, like whatever it is that you don't like about yourself, that's the first thing that you see. How about instead of doing that, you look at yourself and you try and find something that you really love about the way you look? Like the same person is there. It's just the focus is different. So I think that has to be like the conscious decision that you make is to actually improve the way that you see yourself. Like it is a conscious decision. It's not something that just happens.
Yeah, I love that you said that, especially because I recently did an episode on what you focus on expands. And if you're constantly like searching for the positives as well, your brain will then get used to like looking for opportunities, looking for positives and how you can improve, asking empowering questions rather than disempowering questions.
Totally. And it's not about being arrogant, and it's not about being disingenuous. It's about being really authentic and really acknowledging who you are, like that. But I think that there's a bit of shame in that in I don't know if it's just in this country or if it's...
I think it's like that tall poppy syndrome.
It is. I think people don't want to be seen to be cocky in Australia. And it's like you don't have to be cocky to like yourself.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between that behaviour and just being someone who's confident and believes in themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe like if someone was to be arrogant, it's like holding this persona that they're pedestaling themselves and pitting everyone else rather than having everyone as like an equal and seeing that, well, like I am enjoying and loving myself for who I am and what I do. And I'm also really excited for you and whatever you do, not making them mean anything less.
Yeah, I think it's about judgment, isn't it? It's about personal judgment and judgment of others. So it's like, just don't put it on yourself and don't put it on anyone else. Like, just let everyone live their best life. Like, let's just all be happy for each other. The rest doesn't matter. Like, who cares? If someone loves themselves so hard, like, how does it hurt you?
Yeah.
Let them love themselves. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And be happy in themselves. Like,
I literally just recorded a podcast on comparison, and I speak all about this and how, like, if people are triggering you, if someone is arrogant and they're triggering you, or if someone's confident in what they are doing and their self-belief and that's triggering you, it's like asking the question of how is this me and how am I not allowing myself to love what I'm doing, and how am I suppressing that confident version of me, which is really cool that you spoke about this. So I do want to be mindful of your time, Emily. So if my listeners want to find you and follow your journey, connect with you on social media, how would they find you?
Yeah, so it's M_Petricola, which I'm sure you'll have on your podcast.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, _Petricola_cycling on Insta. And then I think it's Emily Petricola Paracyclist on Facebook. They're the two sort of core ways people find me.
Yeah.
And if people want to contact me or whatever, I usually try and get back to anyone that sends a message. So
awesome. And what competitions have you got coming up for the rest of this year?
I've got some local stuff over the next couple of months as we prepare for World Champs. And then in August, we've got Road World Championships in Canada. And then October, I go to Paris for Track World Championships, which is really a bit of thing.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm wishing you the best of luck with all of that. And I have one last question for you, Emily. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So it doesn't have to relate to what we've already spoken about today.
Okay.
And so just intuitively listening into what you believe is one piece of advice or ending comment that the listeners need to hear right now.
I don't know. I think my key message to everyone is, like, dream big. Like, don't be afraid to dream big and set yourself a big goal, but also create a plan that supports the goal. So that, and also, like, those two things won't happen if you don't surround yourself with positive people. So for me, that's always what I preach to groups of school kids that I've worked with or kids that I'm coaching. I think those things are really important.
Yeah. So have a dream, have a plan, and have a support team.
That's it.
I love it. So good. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Emily. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and good luck to the rest of your competitions for this year and for Paris as well. And I'm sure the listeners, and I know myself, will be following closely, supporting you along the way.
Thanks, Elise. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.